Greetings, everybody, and welcome to our discussion of Chapter 16. In Chapter 16, we're going to be addressing issues that are related to managing a diverse workforce. Take a quick look at the learning objectives for this week's material. We're going to know in what ways the workforce of the United States is diverse and evaluating how it might change in the future. We're going to attempt to understand where women and people of color work, how much they are paid, and the roles they play as managers and owners. We're going to identify the role the government plays in securing equal employment opportunity for historically disadvantaged groups and debating whether or not affirmative action is an effective strategy for promoting equal opportunity. We're going to assess the ways that diversity confers a competitive advantage on an organization. We're going to formulate how companies can best manage workforce diversity, making the workplace welcoming, fair, and accommodating to all employees. And we're going to understand what corporate policies and practices are most effective in helping today's employees manage the complex, multiple demands of work and family obligations. Like our country, the workforce has become much more diverse. Managing that diversity has created both opportunities and issues for businesses. As noted, our workforce is much more ethnically and racially diverse. The workforce is aging, while at the same time, millennials are entering the workforce. It can create an interesting series of issues faced by managers, particularly in human resources. The trend towards more women in the workforce has continued to grow. Interestingly, we are seeing a decrease in the number of men entering and remaining in the workforce. Why might this be? Despite efforts from the federal government, there still remains a pay gap between white men and women and persons of color. Slide 7 sets forth some of the reasons for this occurrence, and one would hope that these issues are improving over time. Issues such as sex discrimination, women's choices to pursue lower-paying jobs or slower advancement, occupational segregation, pink-collar issues, all of those have gone towards that, creating that gender and racial pay gap that we see today. There's been much in the news of late about the gender and pay gap in high-tech jobs. Go online and read about that gap that exists in Silicon Valley. While women and persons of color have been making strides in breaking into management, it is probably not at the rate at which our country is becoming diverse. The glass ceiling continues to exist, but in a positive move, it is showing signs of cracking. As noted, a glass wall continues to exist to prevent groups from entering into positions that will lead to upward mobility in organizations. Oftentimes we talk about that glass ceiling, but too frequently we fail to talk about the glass wall. In response to those issues, we are seeing more and more successful business startups owned by women and minorities. Interestingly, organizations with more women involved in leadership positions have better corporate governance and are involved in fewer issues and scandals. We have seen similar studies in politics. More diversity leads to more consensus. Women bring different life experiences to the table and are more willing to consider other stakeholder concerns. More diverse boards also demonstrate a commitment to inclusion. Because discrimination based on age, sex, ethnicity, disability, etc. continues to exist, we have a relatively complex framework of government laws and regulations addressing these issues. Slide 16 contains a concise list of federal laws addressing employment law issues. You can find this chart in your book if you would like to spend a little more time looking at those particular acts and what they do. To eliminate discrimination, the United States in the mid-60s embarked on an aggressive program of affirmative action in government hiring, school admission, and the like. These policies have always been controversial as creating reverse discrimination. We are seeing an attack today, both in the courts and through regulatory change, to deal away with some of these affirmative action laws, programs, and regulations that came into effect in the 60s. Whether or not that is a good idea is the subject of some debate. Sexual harassment in the workplace is another significant issue. Sexual harassment is not generally about sex. It is about power. Any gender or orientation can experience it. It is illegal, and if an employer is aware of such behavior and does nothing to stop it, liability can be significant. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act prevents harassment at work on the basis of race. To avoid these issues of sexual and racial harassment, organizations should take a proactive approach in taking a zero-tolerance approach to this behavior and establishing a viable complaint procedure to deal with these issues. Remember what happened to Fox News recently, who, even though they had a complaint procedure, failed to do anything about those complaints. Organizations should take a proactive approach to diversity issues as well. Try to deal with those issues before they become problems. My organization has created what we call SET, a social equity team, which meets regularly to deal with inclusion and diversity issues. You can never go wrong if you take proactive approaches to dealing with these issues. In addition to being the right thing to do, such programs can mitigate liability in lawsuits. They can create a good atmosphere, and they demonstrate social responsibility. As good employees become more valuable, employers need to consider work-life balance issues. Employees are dealing with many life issues, as are we all, and socially responsible entities will take steps to work with employees on helping to balance those issues. Flexible work schedules, on-site daycare, concierge services, and the like all can really help employees to manage those issues and keep that valuable employee within the organization. All right, well, that's a brief discussion on managing a diverse workforce. We will visit with you again in our last week's material. Take care.